They have done it. Tottenham Hotspur have won the Europa League 1-0, ending their 17-year trophy drought and 41-year trophy drought in Europe as well, beating Manchester United 1-0 in Bilbao. And honestly, there was absolutely nothing pretty about it. It was a tough fought, it was a slog, it was 3 passes then a foul, 4 passes then a foul. Neither side really got going, but it absolutely does not matter. It's all about winning that game of football, and whether it's Brennan Johnson or whether the fact it was an own goal, who cares? Spurs fans, you must be absolutely buzzing. United fans, I'll come towards you guys at the end of the video because tough truths, some things we need to talk about, but we're going to focus on Spurs. We absolutely have to focus on Spurs. And I want to focus on Ange Postecoglou first because his quote, whenever he said at the beginning, near the beginning of the season, October, November, I always win things in my second year. That could have been the most disastrous thing he ever said in his career, but it turns out it was arguably top 10 coldest quotes ever in the history of mankind. Because at that time, who would have thought that Spurs would have lost almost like 20 games in the league, but still would have been really, really good in the Europa League. They've gone all the way to the final, and they play Man United. They don't have the history in the finals. They don't have history when it comes to rising to the big occasion. Literally, the quote, lads, it's Tottenham. But now, you could flip it and go, lads, it's Manchester United, because this side has now done it. They've crossed that finish line. They've won the trophy. And now people can, get off their backs a little bit, which is absolutely incredible. And I know the game itself was a bit all over the place. Like I said, it was a bit of a slog, but I absolutely loved it in terms of it being a contest because going into the game, the build-up before the game, the actual reaction you saw from the fans, this meant so much to both sets of fans and players and managers. And don't let anyone say that it didn't matter, because it absolutely did. Because you could just tell the amount of losses that both teams had in the league position of both teams at the moment in the league, and where they probably will end up at the end of the season. It built and built and built and built to the point where, yes, it is fair to say that in terms of Manchester United and Tottenham Hotspur, the Premier League results did not matter. And I know like some people will say that, oh, it's unacceptable that it doesn't matter. That's your bread and butter of the league. However, you have to be realistic. Mentally, the players switched off. It was not about the league. Everything, absolutely everything. It's the trophy. It's the fact that you can vindicate the entire whole season and just go, you know what, doesn't matter. We won the trophy at the end of it. The fact that you get the money to get in the Champions League next year. The fact that you're playing Champions League football next year. You can attract better quality players. You can maybe rebuild and get the squad to a better place. This meant so much. And Tottenham Hotspur crossed the line. And so what I was saying about, yes, it was a very gritty final, but I absolutely loved it because you could feel the raw emotions coming from both sets of players. I mean, the fact that they were literally kicking lumps out of each other, I thought to myself, you need to remember that, yes, it's two English teams in the final, and sometimes what that can do is it can lead to teams playing in a very aggressive Premier League kind of way end to end. But you need to remember that this is Europe. But actually, the referee played into that and going, and do you know what? You're two English teams. If you want to kick lumps out of each other, go for it. And actually, I think that made the contest even better and built the emotions up even more. But in terms of the game itself, I thought the first 10 to 15 minutes were really, really poor. I thought both teams really needed to get their foot on the ball. They really needed to pass it around, just settle their nerves and grow into the game. But actually, what both teams ended up doing was just trying to kick it into the box as soon as possible. And I thought to myself, both teams really needed to calm down. But that's not at all how they played, and it ended up working out in Spurs' favour. Because when I looked at Man United, they had more players back from injury. Like Euro was fit, Luke Shaw was fit to start, Xerxes was on the bench, Mason Mount started. I thought to myself, Man United have the players. The players are back from injury. They have the experience. I think in the commentary they talked about the amount of trophies that the United players won compared to the Spurs players. They had everything, but they just did not have the quality whatsoever. Spurs had the way they were going to play. They had Brennan Johnson's on the counter-attack, and I thought he was absolutely phenomenal. I think when Tottenham come up against a low block, they really, really struggle, and Johnson himself struggles. But when a team is going at you and he can pick up the ball from deep and drive forward, I think he's really, really effective. I think Solanke was great at holding up the ball. I think the two fullbacks of Perro and Doji, I was worried about how they were going to do defensively, but they did really, really well. And of course, Romero, Van de Ven being back, great. The midfield for Spurs, who was going to be a big, big issue. And it was ended up being the robustness was exactly what they needed. Maybe if they had Madison, maybe if they did have Kulusevski, Bergvall, if they might have ended up playing a little bit different. But that robust midfield is exactly actually what Spurs needed, and it came through for them in this game. And when I think about Man United and how they were trying to break down Spurs, it was all about Amad Diallo. Amad Diallo was the one who, playing in that right 10 position, he was the one who was creating something. Left foot, right foot. I mean, there's one point when he flashes the ball across the box and Destin and Doji just facing the complete opposite wrong way, and you think to himself, oh, there's going to be a bit of trouble. Maybe Basuma Bentancur need to go out to try and help Doji deal with Amad, because he was really getting him on toast. And I also thought that Bruno Fernandes, while playing in that double pivot in midfield, he still has the license to roam around and go wherever he thinks is best for the team, because Amad was so high up on that right hand side. Dorgu was struggling and Mason Mount didn't really have the pace, so he's dropping a little bit deeper. So it's all coming down Man United's right hand side with Amad, and then Bruno was going out to that right hand side as well to support him and get involved in the play over on that side. And on the other side for Spurs, it was the left hand side. It was a Doji bombing up and down, and there was Richarlison up and down the left hand side. Well, I think Richarlison lost a little bit of pace, but it was about him being a nuisance, getting into those spaces, getting the ball high and wide, so then Spurs can put the ball into the box. And I think Man United weren't able to really create much. Can I think of any saves Vicario had to make in that first half? Not really. And can I think of space that Onana had to make in that first half? Not really, but could he maybe have done better for the goal? Perhaps. And I thought it was really interesting how Brennan Johnson and Solanke were attacking the space that Man United left in the back line between the centre-backs and Onana. And that's where Spurs, at any time they were putting the ball into that area, because it was about trying to get the ball in between the back line and Onana, because they clearly thought there was some bit of confusion there. Luke Shaw, maybe it's the lack of minutes he's played because of his injury. Maybe Patrick Dorgu with his inexperience, lack of communication. Harry Maguire was always going to be the more aggressive one of them, especially being in that centre of the defence. But maybe if you bypass him, maybe the Spurs realised that there was an issue there, and they absolutely capitalised. There's no way on earth it is a Brennan Johnson goal, by the way. It is 100% a Luke Shaw own goal, but I think in the final, you know what, if he claims it, fair enough. But I thought that the first half was really, really poor in terms of football and quality, but I felt so much raw emotion from it that I absolutely loved it. I think some stats on the first half, I mean, both sides an XG of like 0.21. That tells you right there that in terms of football and quality shots they had, I think Spurs only had 2 shots, none on targets. United had 5 shots, only 2 on target. It wasn't really great for creating lots of chances, but like I said, you could feel the emotion, and that's why I really love this game of football. But then that second half, and you could tell almost immediately, as soon as Man United kicked off, that they were just going to be on the attack. And Spurs, all this talk about Ange Ball doesn't work. Where is Ange Ball? Ange Ball has been thrown out the window, because clearly what works for Spurs and what worked for them in this second half especially was, we're just going to kick the ball long. We do not care. We are not going to try and pass it and not be cute, not be clever. It is about crossing the line, winning the game of football, and that's exactly what they did. Because I think Romero was kicking the ball long. I loved the fact that he was just, being a bit of a, and he was just causing havoc and, arguing with Harry Maguire, arguing with the United forward line. He was just not having it, and he was doing everything in his power to put them off their game, and I think that actually worked. But then you also had Mickey van der Ven just sweeping everything up. You had the midfield, Spurs in front again, I think being absolutely fantastic. Vicario with some really crucial saves, especially right at the end. I think it was from Luke Shaw from the header, absolutely phenomenal. And I thought that Spurs were just the better side on the day. And they thoroughly deserved it over Man United, who, in my opinion, were absolutely toothless. What did they really create? And especially you may talk about, okay, right at the end of the game, they were really creating chances. But if you think about the ball they were putting into the box, they weren't looking for anyone in particular. It was just a hopeful ball, putting men up and just going, okay, we're going to try and create something, just see what happens. Maybe it will cause a little bit of panic. And I think they got found out, because no balls into the box were cute. No balls in the box were really nicely well worked on the outside to put in a decent delivery. It was just a hidden hope, and I really just thought to myself, they've got nothing. They've got absolutely nothing. Rasmus Højlund was so isolated in the first half. Xerxes, when he came on, didn't really do much better. Although maybe Garnacho was a little bit of a bright spark, but again, what did he produce? Did he produce any chances? No, not really. I thought the main man, Bruno Fernandes, I thought he did really good in terms of everything apart from the final third, because Man United weren't getting him the ball in the position that he needed to make the most of those situations. And he's the one that Man United really need to be focusing on. And I suppose by not winning, it doesn't paper over the cracks for United, it does for Spurs. But now you have to have really honest conversations about Man United. They haven't won the Europa League. They will finish in the bottom half of the Premier League, and they will have the worst ever Premier League season, well, in Premier League history. They're not going to get that money to reinvest in the squad. You need to have some harsh truths about. I don't think in terms of what Amorim, in terms of the future of Amorim, but I think he really needs to hit the ground running next season. I think some of these players you may have to keep on. I think it might help in some other ways of the fact that you just have to just say, we don't have the money, half of you are going to go, and just focus on the youth. But for Spurs, what a lifeline, what a moment. I mean, I think I wanted Spurs to win this because of the fact that it wasn't just the Champions League they could get into next season. It wasn't just the money. The fact that they needed to win a trophy. And I go back to it, Ange Postecoglou, I always win trophy in my second years. Honestly, that could have blown up in his face. They could have lost. He could have been sacked. That could have been it. Do you give Ange Postecoglou the job now? I'm not sure. I'll be completely honest. I think that the Europa League run for both sides has really matched a lot of what's been going on in the league. But the league is what matters. So you probably get rid of him anyway. I don't know. But tonight is about enjoying it. 17 years since Spurs last won a trophy. 41 since they last won a trophy in Europe. And now they can say whatever they want. The champions of Europe in a weird way. And I think they deserve it. And, you know, the year of the bird, as I've seen everyone talking about it on Twitter, Liverpool winning the Premier League, Newcastle winning the Carabao Cup, Crystal Palace winning the FA Cup, and now Tottenham winning the Europa League. It's just nice to see some different winners. And I think Spurs fans will be absolutely over the moon. But United, lots and lots to discuss. But if you want to see some more reaction to the Europa League final and everything to do with Man United and Tottenham Hotspur, me and Toby were going to be doing a podcast dedicated solely to the Europa League. We're talking about the entire fallout for Man United, Spurs, what it means for managers, clubs, fans, everything. That video will be out on Friday, so make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can get notified when that video drops on the Friday. And make sure you give this one a like if you enjoyed it. If you're a Spurs fan, like the video, because why not? You're just champions of Europe and you've won the Europa League.